Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a new story, Spirit of the Forest, Mori, by Jace_is_dead and Sleepy_wildflower. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin Chapter 1, Kitten on Patrol. It had been a quiet night for the underground hero. There had been a few attempted muggings and attacks, but with no major cases or villains on the loose there wasn't much for him to do. He sat on a roof's edge casually, listening and looking for anything to do, but then he felt someone behind him. As a hero he had pretty good instincts when it came to his surroundings, so he knew when someone was near. Aizawa waited a moment before flipping around with his quirk activated and capture weapon at the ready. Except no one was behind him. The only thing behind him was a small black and white kitten that now looked scared. He looked at the rest of the roof, and when he didn't see or hear anyone he calmed down. Crouching to the ground he offered an open hand, trying to calm down the kitten. He felt a little bad now since it was only a small animal, but he was certain someone had been there. He clicked at the cat a little to get its full attention. It stared at his hand before looking to him. "Didn't mean to scare you." It very carefully inched forward, still looking between his hand and his face. "I'm not gonna hurt you." As it got closer Aizawa was able to see it more clearly. Its fur was white with a little dirt and grime, though the coat looked fluffy and long. On top of its head was what looked like two black horns, stemming from the top before curling back and ending in sharp-looking points. Its tail looked almost coiled together, ending in an almost feather-like design. He wasn't all that surprised to see an animal with a mutation. He worked for a chimera that was the smartest mammal on Earth. A kitten with horns and a strange tail wasn't that out of the ordinary. The kitten finally got close enough to sniff at his hand. It didn't take long for the kitten to start rubbing against his hand and purring. He was right that the cat's fur was rather soft, though he was sure it would be better if the cat was able to get a bath. "You're a little small, aren't you?" Feeling the cat as he pet it, it felt like mostly fur and bones, barely any meat on its bones. "Here." He reached into his pockets and felt around. Normally he had cat treats, but Hizashi had been yelling at him for giving too many cats too many treats, but he did have a little jerky on him. "Want some?" The kitten sniffed at it before carefully chomping down on part of it and dragging it away slightly and eating it. Aizawa wished he had more for the kitten since it seemed hungry, but there wasn't much he could do at the moment. He figured he'd carry more on him from now on in case he saw any other hungry cats. The peacefulness was ruined though when he heard a shout. He looked to the kitten and it was looking in the same direction as the shout. It slowly crawled to the edge of the roof and looked down before looking back at Aizawa. He went to the edge and looked down, seeing a woman and their kid surrounded by 3 adults, all holding some kind of weapon or using their quirk. With a sigh he activated his own quirk and jumped down. The fight didn't last long, but Aizawa was surprised when the woman and child didn't make a noise. Looking to them he saw that the kitten was sitting with them and distracting the 5-year-old. "Thank you so much, sir. I already called the police." "Good. Is this your cat?" The woman looked down at the white kitten and shook her head. "And no, sorry." He nodded and was about to pick up the cat, but when he leaned down the kitten jumped and ran away. The kid seemed a little upset, but the woman was quick to distract him. "The cops should be here soon. Would you like me to stay?" "Why yes please." Aizawa was surprised to see the kitten a week after. It looked a little dirtier than before, but that didn't stop the hero from offering more jerky to the small animal. It accepted it like last time, dragging it away and slowly munching on it. He kept an ear out for any noise, but it was once again a quiet night. He had been getting those more and more recently, and it was setting off alarms in his head. "I keep getting quiet nights, it's a little weird." The kitten looked up at him and tilted its head. "Something feels off. There shouldn't be so little criminals out and about." The kitten seemed to look around before nodding its head at him and going back to the jerky. Aizawa paused. He had assumed the animal had a quirk because of the horns, but he didn't think it could understand him. "Can you understand me?" The cat froze and slowly looked up at him, beginning to back up. "Whoa, hey, it's okay, I'm not gonna hurt you." It stopped backing away, but it didn't calm down. "My boss is an animal with a quirk too, it's okay." That seemed to calm it down. It went back to the jerky but kept looking at Aizawa every now and again. Nedzu, the principal hummed, how often does an animal get some kind of intelligence quirk and a mutation? Well, isn't that an interesting question? Nedzu put down the papers he had been reading. Mutations have been occurring more often over the years due to quirks, but an intelligence quirk is very very rare, Aizawa hummed. So the kitten was a rare animal. May I know why you're asking? I keep running into this white kitten on patrol. It has black horns that go back against its head and I thought that was it, but the other night it seemed to understand me and when I asked it freaked out a little. Interesting. I suggest talking to the animal more. It might be more than just an intelligent kitten. Aizawa didn't like the way Nedzu worded it, but he agreed, if he saw it on patrol again he would try to talk to it more. He went into the teacher's lounge and was immediately approached by his husband. So, what did the good principal say? Aizawa sighed and sat down in his chair. An animal with a mutation isn't rare, but one with an intelligence quirk is apparently very rare. He suggested I try to talk to the kitten more. Ah. Are we getting a new cat? I bet BSTRD would love a little kitten running around. The last cat we got was Mangy and they hate each other. That's because Mangy is an orange cat who refuses to die and BSTRD wants him dead. Aizawa rolled his eyes but he had to agree, the black cat hated Mangy. If it has an intelligence quirk it probably doesn't trust humans. Too many people attack animals with quirks as is. But you've been feeding it right. Aizawa glared at Yamada. Exactly. Fine, I'll try to make friends with the smart cat. The next time Aizawa ran into the cat, Yamada had made him carry around a little snack for it. Aizawa had tried to convince him to just let him take cat treats and dry food, but the other hero pointed out that if it had an intelligence quirk it might not want cat food and he couldn't argue with that. The kitten had found him on the same roof and laid next to him. What they usually did was Aizawa would give the cat a little snack and then talk about anything annoying. The kitten would meow or nod along. He didn't tell the cat anything that could be considered important or anything, just complaining about his co-workers or the students he hadn't expelled yet. My husband wanted me to give you this. He pulled out a small box. It mostly had fish but there was some other meats and even some vegetables just in case the cat did want them. Figure you could use some more food. The kitten jumped a little like it was surprised before looking at the box and sniffing it. It kept looking to Aizawa like it was scared he would change his mind. It's okay, I have my own food. He pulled out his own lunch that Yamada had prepared, once again arguing that he needed more actual food and if he was going to feed a cat then he would feed his husband too. It looked at the food one more time before taking a small step back. Aizawa was about to say something when suddenly its body began to change. Its tail got slightly longer while its face changed. Instead of a small kitten a now white fluffy puppy sat there. Aizawa didn't know dog breeds but it looked like a small wolf. It looked to him for a moment, seeming to wait for his reaction, but the hero only nodded and went to his own food. After a moment the wolf pup began to eat the small meal. It ate all of it, even the little rice Yamada had added just to make it look nice. Aizawa slammed the front door open, making Yamada jump, who stared at him for a moment. It turned into a wolf pup. What? The cat turned into a wolf pup. The two stared at each other for a moment. Weird. Yes, it's weird. Yamada just shrugged a little. Maybe it has something to do with its mutation. I don't think a mutation makes an animal change what kind of animal it is. Aizawa sat next to his husband. I think it might be a child. Why? Hizashi. He grabbed the man by his shoulders. A small animal that shows intelligence, eats human food no questions asked, and changed its form. I don't think animals can do that. Maybe talk to Nedzu again, he knows more about animals with quirks than we would. Fine, but I'm pretty sure it's some homeless kid. What seems to be the problem today, Aizawa? I think the kitten is a homeless kid. The mammal didn't seem surprised by that. And why is that? First off, it showed intelligence like I told you, and that kind of quirk in an animal is rare. Then when I feed it the other day it changed form, right in front of me, into a wolf pup, and it stared at me like it was waiting for my reaction. Then I would have to agree with you. If you would like I can ask around and look into possible children with quirks like that. But if they're homeless they might not be registered. You could always ask. I don't want to scare them if they are a kid though, they could be hiding from someone or a runaway case. You'll never know if you don't look into Aizawa. The principal took a sip of his tea. Perhaps you could be the one to help the child, they might need help. Are you guilt-tripping me? Of course not. Ha ha ha. Aizawa rolled his eyes and left the office, coming up with a plan. Chapter 2, Camping Trip. Aizawa felt like he was making progress when it came to the animal, that was probably a kid, that followed him around sometimes. He still gave them snacks and food which seemed to help their relationship, even talking to them seemed to help gain their trust. Instead of just the cat, they would turn into a wolf, a fox, and even a rabbit at one point. He hoped that meant that the possible kid was trusting him enough and would one day reveal himself. He had tried to look into the quirk registry, looking for someone with a quirk that let them turn into animals with a possible fixed tail and horn mutation, adding or taking away looks or details about the quirk, but nothing came up. Even talking to the police and other underground heroes brought nothing. How has your search gone, Aizawa? Nedzu asked one day as he came into the teacher's lounge. Haven't found anything, but they seem to trust me more. He leaned back in the chair with a sigh, turned into a wolf again, then a fox at one point, even a bunny. I think the horns and tail are kind of a fixed mutation but they change size with whatever animal they are. Interesting. But you haven't found anyone with a quirk matching the description. Nope, nothing, not even other heroes or police have heard of something like this. Have you checked those considered dead? Aizawa turned to Nedzu confused. If it is a child and they're homeless, there's the possibility of them being considered dead. I would check there as well. Thanks. Of course, Aizawa. I do hope you befriend this creature. I feel like they would be a delight to have around. Whatcha doin', Dad? Aizawa turned to see Hitoshi resting on the back of the couch. Remember that animal I told you was following me? With the horns and weird tail. Aizawa nodded. Yeah, is it about them? I'm pretty sure it's a kid with a shape-shifting quirk. I tried the active registry, even asked some other pros and police, but no one had seen or heard of anything like that. Then Nedzu suggested I check the dead registry because if it is a kid and they went missing, after a while they would be marked dead. Yikes, find anything? He patted the spot next to him and waited for Hitoshi to sit next to him. I think, he turned the screen, there was a picture of a baby with black horns, white hair, and bright green eyes. Midoriya Izuku, quirk, Najutsun, gives the user horns 3 tails. He had only remembered seeing the one, and allows them to turn into and talk to other animals, reported missing when he was just 4 years old and considered dead when he was Jesus. They considered him dead after only a week of searching. Hitoshi asked, looking a little sick as he read the screen. That doesn't add up, most parents won't even think about it till after a year of the kid missing. He wrote down the names of the parents. I'm asking Tsukachi about this. If it is this Midoriya Izuku, are you gonna help him? Aizawa looked a little surprised at Hitoshi. I mean, he's probably homeless, right? So we gotta help him. You're a good kid. He kissed the top of Hitoshi's head, and yes, we'll help him. Eraser, just the man I was looking for. Aizawa paused at the door. He hadn't expected that. I looked into that thing you asked about and I have a case that might match it. I actually came to ask about something similar. Tsukachi paused, letting the hero continue. I looked into the dead registry and found someone who matched the description, reported missing when he was 4 and after a week the parents gave up and reported him dead. SHT, what were their names? Midoriya Hisashi and Midoriya Inko. The detective typed the names in. Anything. We have their missing son Izuku, who seems a little less dead and missing than they thought, and a few wellness checks. Looks like some neighbors were worried and had asked someone to check on the family but they didn't find anything. Or they just weren't looking. Midoriya Hisashi was a police officer and with Inko being his wife she was treated just as nicely. So any reports from their local police could be biased and their neighbors would have been treated like they were crazy. Tsukachi sighed. I'll open a case but keep it inactive right now. Since we don't technically have proof that the animal following you is him, then there wouldn't be an actual point. he wrote down a few more things before handing a folder to Aizawa. This is what I wanted to bring up. I found a bunch of reports of a supposed spirit living in the forest, the one with the old abandoned buildings. Apparently when hikers or explorers get lost or hurt, a spirit finds them, heals them, and then guides them back to the paths. Could be the kid. Could be. If it's not, I could use you checking it out anyway. Right, thanks Tsukachi. No problem, just keep me updated. So you think the animal following you is actually a kid named Midoriya Izuku who went missing and was considered dead when he was 4 and is also the supposed spirit of the forest Tsukachi's been getting reports about. Hizashi summed up while they ate dinner. That's kinda cool, Hitoshi commented. He's like an urban legend. His quirk name would match with it, but it's just such a weird name. He picked at his food for a moment. I did some research on what a Najutsun is. It's the dark equivalent of a kitsune, thought to be evil, bring bad luck, stuff like that. Why would a kid call their quirk that? I don't think it was the kid, Aizawa sighed. We did some research on the parents. From what we could find they seemed superstitious and had a lot of beliefs. You would think they would call the quirk kitsune or something, but they chose the evil version of a spirit. So they thought he had an evil quirk. They both looked to Hitoshi a little sadly. We are gonna help him, right? Of course. Hizashi assured. We would never abandon a kid like that. Cool, so I get a brother, right? Aizawa groaned, but they all knew he was just messing with them. Oh. We should turn the forest investigation into a camping trip. A little family outing for us. You hate camping. Let me have my fun show Yuta. Aizawa guesses that's how they ended up in the forest with a few bags, a tent, and Hizashi's weird dream to camp even though he doesn't like bugs or the outdoors. A lot of people assumed Aizawa didn't like it either since it involved leaving the house, but he actually really liked camping, just the outdoors and no one else, able to do whatever you want surrounded only by the wildlife. So once you have it done you put the posts here and put them in the ground. Usually people hammer them but you can also just stomp them in. Aizawa was showing Hitoshi how to set up the tent while Hizashi was putting everything away. When we pack up you sometimes have to dig them out a little, but it's pretty easy. Bug sprays in the car. Thank you. They both watched the blonde book it to the car, hiding in there for a moment. Why did Pops want to come if he was just gonna hide from the bugs? Not a clue, Hitoshi. Once they had gotten everything set up and put away they decided to split up, though it was Hizashi going by himself while Aizawa showed Hitoshi more camping things. And you're sure you're okay going by yourself? Yes. It'll be totally fine, Sho. I'll just take a quick look around and use the map. We are supposed to be looking for a supposed spirit anyway. Fine, but keep your phone on you. Good luck, Pops. Hizashi waved goodbye as he headed further into the forest. They had places on the map marked where people had encountered the creature. It seemed like it hung closer to the old buildings in the forest or areas that would be considered dangerous. If they really were helping protect hikers then it made sense. He must have lost track of the time since the area around him was now practically pitch black. He was a little nervous since he could no longer tell where he was, but he still had his phone on him. Hey Sho. You're lost, aren't you? How'd you get lost? Hizashi groaned. Neither of them would ever let this go. I don't know. You still have the map. Yeah, and I can use my phone as a flashlight. It should be dash. He paused, hearing leaves around him rustle. Hold on, I think I heard something. Ignore it, Hizashi. It's probably your mind playing tricks since it's dark out. The noise was getting louder and closer. He used his phone and was even able to see some of them move. Don't think so, Sho. I'll call you back. Don't dash. Hizashi hung up and looked around. Hello. Is someone there? The leaves seemed to rustle more before a small animal jumped out of the bushes making him jump. Whoa. He shined the light at it and calmed down once he realized it was just a white rabbit. Well, hello there. He crouched down and offered a hand. The rabbit hopped closer. Aren't you friendly? Looking it over he could see small black horns and a strange tail. Wait, Yuri, the animal Sho keeps talking about. The creature looked into his eyes for a moment. If the white fur, horns, and tail weren't already a giveaway then the green eyes would have been. It felt like the little thing was staring into his soul, trying to understand him. Then it stopped and looked down an area, beginning to hop away. Oh, well, bye. Hizashi turned his flashlight to the map. Now where dash? He paused when he felt a thump on his foot. Looking down, the rabbit was back and had stomped his foot. What is it? It began hopping the same way, pausing to look back at him. You want me to follow you? Then he remembered the stories of hikers and campers being guided back to their paths. Oh. Yep, I will follow you. It was a little hard keeping up with the rabbit since it was a lot faster than him in the forest, but it made sure to stop and check that he was still following. Once they got close enough, Hizashi was able to see the fire that Aizawa had likely started. Well, thank you, little rabbit. It hopped once and turned away. You don't want to stay. It stared at him again before looking to the fire, likely considering it before turning away. All right then, stay safe, little rabbit. Who are you talking to? Hitoshi shouted, likely able to see and hear Hizashi now. I was talking to Sho's little animal friend. He made it to the fire and sat down, turning his phone light off and handing the map to Aizawa. Definitely a person. Then tomorrow night we can split up and look around while Hitoshi sleeps. What? I wanna go. Not happening, kid, it's dangerous out there. So we can let Pops go unsupervised. He literally got lost. He's also an adult. You're 11. Hitoshi crossed his arms. That's stupid. Sure kid, eat your food and go to bed. Chapter 3, Animal Attacks. Hitoshi thought it was stupid of them to leave him at the campsite alone. He wasn't in danger or anything, but he was bored, and as Yamada had reminded them multiple times, a bored Hitoshi was a dangerous one. Finally getting tired of looking at the dying fire, he threw in a few more logs before grabbing a flashlight. If the spirit was actually another kid, then he didn't see a problem trying to befriend it. After all, they both had quirks considered evil or villainous. They wanted to help the kid too. There was no reason Hitoshi couldn't also look for him. He was only a little ways from the campsite when he heard it. Looking up in the trees, he saw the light reflect off of the animal's eyes. Its body hung loosely on the branch above him. It looked like a giant white snake with horns and a coiled tail. The two stared at each other for a moment before Hitoshi lifted his hand. Hi there, you're the kid that keeps following Dad on patrol, right? The snake's eyes seemed to widen before it moved, slowly slithering down the tree before it changed. It was hard to describe, but the movement seemed natural, turning from a large snake into a child. From what Hitoshi could tell, they were likely around the same age, the other being slightly shorter and looking a little malnourished. The kid had snow-white hair shoved under a black, slightly torn beanie. Most of his face was covered by a medical mask that had seen better days. He wore baggy, tattered clothes but no shoes. Looking him up and down, Hitoshi noted that his feet looked like they had claws, while his fingernails looked longer and sharper than a normal person's. He assumed the horns and tail were hidden in the beanie and clothes, though he didn't understand why. Why you shouldn't behere? It didn't sound like a threat. The voice was too rough and quiet to sound anything more than worried. Could G get hurt? Hitoshi assumed the other sounded weird due to disuse, likely never talking to another person until now. You're also out here. Hitoshi pointed the light, making the other jump a bit and move out of the beam. What are you doing? He turned the flashlight off, able to see the other's reflective eyes still. And not supposed to see me. He thought that was weird. But if the other had come from an abusive household and was abandoned, it made sense. Go back Toto campsite, safer. I don't know, I feel pretty safe right now. He shrugged a little. You're the person that keeps helping all those hikers and stuff, right? So why should I be worried about getting hurt? The other let out a slight whimper sound, something moving below their shirt before the tail finally showed itself. It was longer than the kid's leg. It was all black except for the end of the tail. It looked like two tails wrapped around a larger one, the bigger one likely creating the end that looked almost like feathers or a fish tail. Do you have 3 tails? It's fine if you do, I'm not gonna judge you. He turned the light on again but kept it facing the ground. That's why you showed yourself, right? There was weird growl-like noise before the kid changed into a fox. Hitoshi had to admit all of the animals were cool, but he still found it strange that the other didn't just stay in human form. The fox trotted into the light before lifting the tail. It slowly unwound from itself, revealing a long black tail with the white feathery end and two slightly smaller barbed tails with sharp points. They stepped out of the light and changed back to human. "Whoa, cool tails," he heard the other shuffle. "Well, I'm gonna explore the forest more." "No." Claws lightly dug into his shirt, not enough to pierce. "Luckily, dangerous, remember. It'll be fine." He began walking deeper into the trees, hearing a slight rustling sound before a white deer was next to him. "Are you following me?" The deer nodded. "Cool." Hitoshi noticed that while the horns had stayed the same, the tails had gotten smaller, looking very similar to an actual deer's tail. "So can you change the size of your tails at will? Or is it like an adapt thing?" He watched as the tails suddenly got larger and longer, dragging on the ground for a moment before they went small. "That's pretty sick. What about the horns?" The deer shook its head. "They still look cool. Can you change your size?" Hitoshi's eyes widened as the deer next to him suddenly got larger, definitely bigger than any normal deer. "Hitoshi!" Both of them jumped when a light suddenly hit them. "What are you doing out here? We told you to stay at the site." "I was dash." He turned and saw that the other had run away at some point. "Good job, you scared them." "Who?" Aizawa asked, looking around them. "The guy, the one that keeps following you." "I saw who it was, definitely Midoriya Izuku." Aizawa felt a little jealous. The kid had been following him on patrol, so why was he only showing his human form to Hitoshi and guiding Hisashi back to the campsite? "Dad, you can't seriously be jealous." "I'm not." "Sho, honey, you're literally pouting." "No, I'm not." "Sure, why don't you go for a small hike? Maybe you'll run into the little guy." Aizawa grunted. It wasn't a bad idea. After all, today was their last day to investigate. "Fine." He stood up and grabbed a few things before silently going down one of the paths. It was one they hadn't gone down yet since it rarely had any sightings of the kid, so they didn't see a point if he was more likely to be somewhere else. The path led to where the old town was. It had been abandoned long before Aizawa was in school. From what he read, the place had been a crime hot spot for a while before a hero came in and destroyed the place, leaving the old city to the wilderness, even having a wildlife hero come in and grow more trees to cover everything up. The place had interested Aizawa as soon as he had read about it in his second year, Nedzu even using it during class as an example of hero cover-up. He had wanted to know why it needed to be covered up, but since the place was difficult to find, no one had the energy to try and find out. Maybe for a school trip sometime he could convince Nedzu and the other teachers to go here. The rest of his thoughts were cut off though as growling came from behind him. He turned around and came face to face with a wolf, which surprised him. He hadn't heard any reports of wild animals in the area. He also didn't know how to deal with a wolf. It wasn't something in training, and as much as he liked camping and going outside, he had never had to deal with a predator. Taking a step back though seemed to be a mistake as the growling grew louder and it stalked closer to him. Looking around revealed nothing though. He wasn't dumb enough to think he could outrun the wolf, but he also knew if he could get around it, it could let him get an opening and possibly injure the animal enough to run away from it. Aizawa didn't get to try though as it lunged forward. Ducking away from the animal made him trip up and slip on a rock. Falling to the ground, he felt his ankle twist before his head crashed against dirt. "If I die to a wolf in the woods," he sat up slowly, trying to get his vision to stop spinning, "I'll never hear the end of it." Blinking a few times he was finally able to see clearly, and the wolf somehow looked more set off. It howled before trying to run at him. He grabbed his emergency knife and held it at the ready, but he didn't need it. A large white and black tiger leaped out of the forest and tackled the wolf to the ground. The two animals biting and scratching each other before the tiger got a hold of the wolf and bit down hard. He heard the wolf howl in pain before it was tossed away. The wolf slowly got up and growled at the tiger, who began to pace in front of Aizawa. It roared back, making the wolf whimper before running away, likely to treat its own wounds. Aizawa knew right away he wasn't in trouble, the horns and tail making it clear who the tiger was. He also likes to think that Tsukachi would have warned him of a tiger in the forest. The tiger looked at him for a moment before changing into the kid Hitoshi had described, except in the light Aizawa could see scars littering the kid's body. The new bloody teeth and claw marks didn't make the picture look any better. Hurt. The kid slowly crawled to him, looking at his slightly swollen ankle. Stay here. He wanted to grab the kid and stop them from running, but he was too slow, likely having a small concussion. After a moment the kid came back with a handful of things that Aizawa wasn't sure he was going to do with. What are you doing? He tried to sit up more but they stopped him. Hit your head. Aizawa nodded a little. Don't move much. The kid showed the random things. Fix foot. He set the pile down and dug out a few things before taking of Aizawa's shoe and moving his brief leg. The hero didn't know what to expect, but he definitely didn't expect what the kid was doing. He had made an almost perfect splint and brace and was wrapping it around Aizawa's leg, even using some leaves and grass to create cushioning so the wood wouldn't rub against it. Then they turned to Aizawa and looked into his eyes for a moment before feeling his head. There was a slight bump but not much else and luckily no bleeding. Wolves mean, don't like me much. Aizawa could see why. The kid kicked the wolf's butt. That's alright, you saved me. He patted the kid's head, causing them to duck slightly and make a strange noise. Do you know who I am? Why yes. They then dipped their head, a little like a bow. Sorry for following you. Hey, I'm not upset about it, just wanted to know why you were following me. Animals talk, said you're nice. I like heroes. That news shocked Aizawa a bit. He didn't know animals talked about him. Be better, should go back. What about you? He pointed to the still bleeding wounds. Those don't look too good, you need to get those treated, possibly stitched. The kid shook his head violently. No. Don, like hospitals people are there. Me and my family are people but you interacted with us. Different. He stood and helped Aizawa off the ground, the hero testing the foot and surprised to feel no pain other than a dull ache. Why here? Didn't come here before. My husband suggested I take a walk to relax. He looked down at the wrapped foot. See where that got me, but I was interested in the abandoned city here. Do you know anything about that? The kid nodded. Lots of overgrowth, larger animals avoid it, but the smaller ones like it, lots of hiding spots. Are you hiding? Aizawa crouched down a little to get eye level with them. Is that why you're in the forest? The kid made a few weird noises but once he realized Aizawa didn't understand he hummed like he was trying to find the words. No and yes. So you're hiding but you're not. The kid nodded slowly. Okay, is there a reason you chose the forest? Put here by Dash. He made a growl-like sound as his foot clawed the floor. Stayed. Do you want to leave? Why? Because it's not safe for a kid to be out here by themselves. You should have someone watching over you. Animals watch sometimes. The kid looked down at his wounds. Need water to get clean. They turned and began slowly walking further into the forest, Aizawa trailing behind him. He had to wonder if the kid minded him following them. It wasn't like the kid couldn't just turn into an animal and run away. He could probably run faster than Aizawa as a human too. But the kid was walking slowly, looking behind him every now and again to make sure the hero was still there. Do you have a name? Hitoshi was right in that the kid fit the description for Midoriya Izuku, but if they had a different name he would use it. Izuku, I think. My name's Aizawa Shoyuta, you can call me Shoyuta if you'd like. They nodded a little before pausing. Here. He moved some of the foliage to reveal a large river. Aizawa was about to argue against using it but the kid tugged on his sleeve a bit before walking further down the river before going uphill. On the hill there was grass surrounding them but Aizawa didn't see anything else until Izuku reached down and lifted the grass, which turned out to be a bunch of sticks tied together covered in dirt and grass. The kid looked to him before propping the door up and walking inside. Aizawa followed hesitantly but gasped at what he saw. The entire thing was a large hole in the ground. It had a low ceiling but its walls were wide and dug into. In the corner there was a nest made of old dirty cloths, leaves, and even some moss. Above it a part of the wall had been dug out and wood lined it, letting the books that sat there not get dirty. then there was a large hole with burned wood and ashes at the bottom. It had been recently lit considering it was still smoking, but there was a small hole above it that let air filter in and out, the old fire giving the place a nice warm temperature. Water, the kid held out a plastic water bottle, he took it and stared at it for a moment. Filtered, is clean. Aizawa was going to trust the kid. If he got sick it wouldn't be a big deal anyway. Izuku disappeared around one of the corners before coming back with a metal bucket full of water. He looked to Aizawa before shifting into an otter and jumping into the water. He backed up a little to avoid getting plashed by the small animal, but he was curious. The water became a reddish-brown as all the BLD and Grim came off. They jumped out of the water and shook their body off before turning back into a human. Aizawa wondered how the clothes and mask translated to animal since they were now also wet. He wondered what would happen if the kid wasn't wearing a mask. Would it affect how the animal form look? Maybe he could find out if the kid stuck around. Do you have bandages or anything? Some of those cuts are deep and need to be cleaned more, they're still bleeding. Izuku looked at the wounds before pulling his mask down. Aizawa was a little surprised to see more scars, but the scars that were obviously from a muzzle didn't surprise him. The kid opened his mouth wide and Aizawa watched in fascination as some of his teeth changed, becoming fawn-like with a liquid dripping down them. They brought their arm up to their mouth and bit down, letting some of the liquid and BLD drip down before letting go. Why did you? The hero trailed off as the wound suddenly stopped bleeding, the BLD looking strange as it congealed. Venom, the kid brought his mask back up, helps BLD loss in small D doses, but dangerous. Yeah, most people don't use snake venom for medicine like that. The kid blushed a little and tilted his head down. Smart though, how'd you find out? I like reading, he pointed to the books, lots of animals and quirks. Aizawa nodded a little, curious about what else the kid knew. You should still wrap those though. Made some. Izuku lifted his hands to show a web-like collection hanging from his fingertips. Webs have natural antisepticide for not getting infected. Aizawa was never going to tell Hizashi that the kid could apparently also make webs, probably able to turn into insects as well, because then Hizashi might hate the kid and he wouldn't be able to live with that. That's pretty smart Izuku, did you read about that too? Had to, didn't want to steal, people need them more. At least the kid didn't want to be a thief, but Aizawa was sure anyone would look away if a little kid took a few bandages. It's good you're smart enough to take care of yourself, you're a fast learner too. He assumed Izuku was anyway, there was no way they would survive out here otherwise, animal quirk or not. The kid looked around before standing up, his clothes still damp from the water. Gee, go back now. I should probably go before they get worried. Oh, you want to come with? I'm sure the others wouldn't mind. He offered his hand to the kid, but they shook their head. No, supposed to stay away. Aizawa wanted to punch whoever told this kid to stay away from people. Okay, I can find my own way back. Stay safe, alright. You know where to find me. The kid nodded and walked out with Aizawa before turning into a small rabbit and hopping in the opposite direction. He watched the animal for a moment before sighing. Aizawa was going to help this kid if it was the last thing he did. Chapter 4, Feeding Raccoons. Izuku wasn't sure what he was thinking when he decided to interact with the family more. They all seemed like nice people and had apparently gone there to look for Izuku specifically. No one had ever looked for him. They had decided to follow Aizawa again. The man had said he wasn't mad and didn't mind that Izuku followed him, plus he fed them. Shifting to Hawk, he flew through the city before spotting Aizawa in an alley. He shifted to Raccoon and got closer. He didn't want to interrupt what Aizawa was doing since it looked like the hero was currently fighting. They would only step in if he needed help. After the hero secured the people to a post, Izuku turned into a golden flying fox bat. Normally he would just be a fruit bat, but he wanted the hero to know right away it was him. Aizawa had finished tying the criminals up when he heard a slight whoosh behind him. Turning, he saw what looked like a giant white bat holding onto the wall. Whoa, he took a small step back before sighing, sorry kid, you scared me. They made a screech sound and dipped their head. It's alright, I just didn't know bats could get that big. What the F is that thing? One of the criminals shouted, the bat climbed up the wall a little while Aizawa glared. "Shut up," he turned back to the animal and offered his hand. "It's all right." The bat slowly climbed back down, it grabbed onto his arm and hung there for a moment before slowly climbing to his back, comfortable. Another screech sound was the only answer. "All right, just don't fly away when the cops get here." He could feel the creature's claws dig into his shirt, not touching his skin though. When the cops did arrive he felt them stiffen and change. While the claws weren't gone the boy felt a lot smaller. He turned his head to see a tiny bat. With big ears, the thing looked like it would fit in his hand and have room for more. Aizawa would murder for this kid just based off of how cute some of the animal they could turn into were. "I'll just need the usual report eraser." Tsukachi was writing something down in his notepad before he looked up and squinted at Aizawa's shoulder. Is that a bat?" "It's the spirit in the forest you keep getting reports about." Aizawa reached into his belt and pulled out a small piece of jerky before handing it to the bat. The piece was almost as big as the little animal. "Their name's Izuku." The detective nodded a little slowly. "Well, hello Izuku." The bat let out a small screech, somehow looking surprised Tsukachi was talking to him. "Keep eraser here out of trouble, all right. You two have a good night." Aizawa rolled his eyes, making sure the kid was secure before using his capture weapon and lifting them to the roof. Once they were on the roof Izuku jumped off and turned into his human form, a hand gripping his sleeve. Trouble." Aizawa patted the kid's head, once again making them duck and make a strange noise. Tsukachi was only teasing, "No one's in trouble." Izuku nodded once. "I'm surprised you're here though, figured you'd avoid me for a while." "Why?" "Well, you showed yourself to me and my family, figured we scared you off since you don't like people." Izuku tugged on his sleeve a little. "Nice." They crouched down a little and clawed at the ground. Didn't see why I should leave." Aizawa hummed and looked around. "Why don't we get some food? You're probably hungry." He turned to the edge of the roof ready to jump. "You coming, kid?" "Emichim." The kid shifted into a small bird, chirping before flapping his wings, ready to follow Aizawa. They traveled for a few minutes before Aizawa stopped in front of a small cafe. "You wanna go in?" Izuku shook his head. "All right, I'll pick something out for us then." The bird shifted into a raccoon and sat near the edge of the sidewalk, watching the hero go in the order food. The hero came back out with 2 bottles of water and 2 muffins. He handed one to the raccoon who changed back to the kid. They stayed crouching and pulled their mask down, slowly chewing on the muffin while Aizawa tried not to laugh. The kid looked adorable crouched down over the muffin. "Have those wounds healed yet?" "A little." The kid pulled up his sleeve, showing the spiderweb bandages and even a few more new injuries. "Wolf came back, had to take care of it." Aizawa was about to comfort the kid, but when his hand got too close they growled, Sorry." "It's all right, my cats do the same." He thought about apologizing for comparing Izuku to the cats but the younger didn't seem to mind, simply nodding along like it made sense. Once they were both done eating Aizawa looked at the time and sighed. He wasn't sure where he stood with the kid honestly. Most of the time they were clinging to him, but other times they seemed scared. "Hey kid," he crouched down so they were eye level. He didn't want the kid to growl again. "I gotta head home, do you want to come with?" They seemed to think about it before shaking their head. "Not as supposed to go inside." Aizawa glared a little with a sigh. Izuku seemed to know he wasn't angry at him though. "I want you to know that if someone offers to take you inside, you're allowed to go in. You don't have to, but you can, all right." He patted the kid's head. "No growl this time, but I gotta head home so remember that for next time." "Okay." He gave the kid one more nod before leaving. Looking back Izuku had turned into a squirrel and ran into one of the alleys. "Good news, kid still follows me around. Bad news, he's not allowed inside, so I couldn't convince him to come back with me." "Dad, isn't that kinda like kidnapping?" "No, kidnapping would be if I took him when he said no." Hitoshi rolled his eyes and went back to his food. "That's progress though, right Sho? He's showing himself more and actually talking." Aizawa hummed. "Okay, what is it?" "The way they talk, they're clearly smart since they've survived for so long and found alternatives to things they can't get, but it's like they can't find the words." he sighed, I don't know, maybe if we can get them to live with us we could help with that. Maybe ask Nedzu about it, could be because of the environment he's been in, it seems like he rarely uses his human form and if he can't talk when he's in animal form then it makes sense. Could also be because of the muzzle scars you saw, they both turned to Hitoshi who wasn't meeting their eyes, they're trying to use the least amount of words possible. SHT, I didn't even think about that. When Izuku got back to his burrow he shifted to a dog and went to the fire pit, using his paws to dig out all the older ashes before throwing more wood in and lighting it. Once it was enough they went to their nest and laid down, thinking back to what Aizawa had told them. He already thought the family was strange but it just kept getting weirder. First they looked for him, then they didn't run away and seemed to even accept them, and then Aizawa had bought them food and have feared to take him inside. Before they fell asleep Izuku thought about seeing them again, it wouldn't be hard to track any of them down. Where do you think you're going? Hitoshi rolled his eyes, he assumed that the group had given up after Hisashi had gone crazy on their parents for allowing their kids to bully him. Home, why? He saw the hesitance to answer his question, that was a plus anyway as it gave him the chance to grab his bag and walk past them. Hey! We're not done with you. He ignored them and kept walking. Once they were outside school gates though one of them grabbed him and threw him into one of the nearby alleys. You think you can ignore us? How was I ignoring you? They all hesitated again, but the leader was clearly angry. Would you stop that SHT? Nope. That only seemed to PSS the group off more as the leader reared their fist back ready to punch him. He closed his eyes, ready for the pain, but nothing came. Opening his eyes he saw the group looking in terror above him, turning his head he saw a large python slowly lowering itself down the wall. He wasn't scared though, it was white with horns. Let's get out of here. The leader shoved Hitoshi against the wall again before they ran out of the alley in fear, most of them screaming about a snake demon. Hi Izuku, the snake went lower before it changed back to a human and landed on the ground. What are you doing here? Visiting, they looked at the alley entrance, dawned like bullies. Yeah, me either. He shouldered his bag and offered his hand to Izuku, the other stared at it for a moment before carefully grabbing it, being mindful of his claws. Dad said he ran into you last night. Gave me a muffin. He smiled a little before slowly dragging Izuku out of the alley. Not supposed to be seen. It's fine, you're with me right? They stared at him for a moment, nodding and walking a little slowly next to him. You can turn into an animal if you want. Enna draws attention. He nodding in understanding. 2 kids was less suspicious than a kid with an animal that had a mutation. Pops gave me some extra money this morning if you want to get food. He point further up the street, there's a vendor I usually go to, better than going inside since I think you need shoes for that. Izuku looked down at his feet with a shrug. Uncomfortable. I guess the claws would make it weird to have normal shoes on, you probably need custom ones or something. The other's face scrunched up as he let out a small growl. Or not, you just don't like shoes. Like the ground. Respect, I think my feet would hurt too much. Izuku paused and lifted his foot. For a moment he thought their foot was just dirty but then Hitoshi realized that their foot looked similar to a dog's. Is that natural? No use it when in the city cement hurts sometimes. The bottom changed to look like a human's with little scars on the bottom. Forest is softer. I could see that, all the grass and moss and stuff. They finally made it to the vendor who waved at Hitoshi. Anything you want. Izuku only shrugged a little. Alright, can I get 2 takoyaki and strawberry milks? Sure thing. Once he paid and received their food he handed one of each to Izuku who stared at it for a moment before taking a bit. Have you never had this before? They shoot their head. It's pretty good, I usually get some after school. Try the milk. Also good. I did kinda wonder if you ate meat cause you can turn into animals. Talk to them too. Right, but you do eat meat. Izuku nodded. Do you not feel guilt about it? No, go hunting with some animals. They lost the fight. Hitoshi stared at him for a moment before shrugging. Fair enough. Chapter 5, Protecting Baby Birds. Hey Pops. Hisashi hummed, not looking away from the stove. So Izuku's kinda like a cryptid, right? Like the whole living in the forest, turning into animals, people calling him, the spirit of the forest thing. Does that mean people have probably gone into the forest before us and tried to like investigate it? I'm not actually sure, he thought for a moment before turning the stove off and moving the pan to the counter, when Tsukachi explained to us it didn't sound like anyone had actually investigated before. Yeah, but he was probably only talking about cops and stuff. I mean, if people were saved by a mysterious white animal with horns and a strange tail, they would like post about it, right? And someone would hear. Hisashi finally turned to look at Hitoshi. Hitoshi, what are you talking about? Did something happen? The 11-year-old looked down, rubbing the back of his neck. So, other day Izuku kinda showed up at my school. Like these guys had, they dragged me into some alley and then suddenly a giant snake was slithering down the wall and they ran, but I knew it was Izuku, so we kinda hung out for a while, but I guess one of those guys found out about the forest thing and here. Hitoshi handed over his phone to Hisashi, who stared at it for a moment. It showed someone's social media page with two pictures. One showed the alley Hitoshi was talking about with a large white snake that had horns, the other showed what looked like a horror photo of a creature with reflective eyes and the caption, "Forest Spirit attacked us. Should we check it out? This isn't good." I know, I'm sorry I didn't tell you before, but whoa, Hisashi crouched down and grabbed Hitoshi's shoulder. This isn't your fault, those boys should have left you alone and Izuku was just trying to help you. But you're going to tell Sho when he gets home. I'm gonna head to the woods, alright. Izuku climbed up one of the trees, checking on the little nest inside with careful hands. The mama bird had asked them to protect them for the day since she needed to travel somewhere and he could do that easily. The bird told him that the babies didn't need food, just a set of eyes on them. Once he was sure they were okay, he jumped out of the tree and checked the area around it. If they could see a possible predator before it got close, then they could scare it off. I think I heard something over here. Izuku looked down the path, listening closely as a group of footsteps ran towards them. He looked to the nest for a moment before collecting a few leaves and pieces of moss to hide it. They didn't know if it was hunters and they didn't want to risk the babies. He shifted to a small mouse and stayed hidden in the bushes, waiting for the people to walk by. Dude, we don't even know what we're looking for. Yes, we do. My dad's a police officer and he told me all about this weird creature that lives here. It matches with what we saw in the alley. Izuku shuffled a little to see who the people were and recognized them almost immediately as the group that had tried to hurt Hitoshi. He didn't know why they were here, but if they hurt Hitoshi, then there was no doubt in his mind that they would hurt the animals. He thought about what would scare them off before just settling on a wolf. They slowly crawled out of the bushes with a low growl, letting their claws strike the ground as they approached the children. Whoa! What the F? The two lackeys looked ready to run, but the leader only smiled widely. So this is the supposed spirit. The guy lifted a rock, not so tough. Izuku wasn't able to dodge the large rock as it hit his face. With a growl he barked at them before starting to run. The two finally got the hint and started running away while the leader hesitated a little more. I am not scared of some dog. Izuku pounced onto the child, using their claws and larger frame to pin them to the ground and roared in their face, help. Izuku only continued to growl before he felt thins hitting his body. Looking up, the kids had come back with rocks and sticks throwing or hitting him. He growled again and slowly got off the kid. As soon as he was up, the other ran to his friends and they all rushed out of the forest, leaving Izuku covered in bruises and blood. Shifting back to human, he looked himself over. He had a head wound above his eye that was bleeding badly, a few more scratches from rocks and branches, but everything else was only bruised or sore. They knew the most worrying thing was the head wound. While they had had a few before, they still weren't sure what to do, especially when it was bleeding so much. Izuku. He turned at the sound of his name. He recognized this voice. They were going to change and go to the voice, but when they stood and tried to turn into a fox, it was like their body was fighting against them. Black spotted his vision and he fell to the ground. Izuku. Shaking their head, they looked around and saw Hisashi running towards them. Once the hero was close enough, he could see the blood, while most of it seemed small. The head wound looked bad, the red mixing in with their white hair. Izuku curled in on themselves, whimper slightly when their vision swam again. "Are you okay?" Hizashi kneeled near the younger, not wanting to make them uncomfortable. "What happened?" "Our rocks." Izuku felt around the wound and hissed when he found it. "Tried Toto make them leave." "You did a good job, little listener. I doubt they're coming back." Hizashi tried to joke, but Izuku only whimpered more. "All right, you need medical attention. That head wound looks bad. Can you stand?" T tried. "Fell, can't change." The blonde sighed a little. "All right, is it okay if I pick you up?" "We don't need you getting hurt anymore." Izuku nodded, trying to hold back any noises as Hizashi carefully picked up the child. As soon as they were in his arms they shifted around, seeming to crawl over him before settling on his back and holding on. "Okay, I know you don't like hospitals, so we're going to wear me and show work. There's a very nice lady there who can fix you right up." "Nice." Hizashi laughed a little. "She'll be so nice to you, I promise." Aizawa felt like he was going to kill some kids today. First they bullied his son multiple times, and then they had gone after their other kid. Even if Izuku wasn't adopted yet, they had very much called dibs on the animal shifter. "Alright," Zashi said. He took them to Recovery Girl. "How bad was it? Is he okay?" Hitoshi asked anxiously as they got into the car, heading to the school. "I'm sure he's fine. Your pops just said it was a bad head wound. She'll get them fixed right away." The kid nodded, still looking a little guilty. "What's wrong?" "It's just if Izuku hadn't helped then they wouldn't be hurt." Aizawa looked to him for a moment before sighing. "That's illogical. Neither of you had any reason to believe they would try and attack him in the woods. Sure, maybe if they saw you two outside of school again or something, but there's no reason they should have known he was in the woods to begin with. I think one of their dads works with Detective Tsukachi. I'll ask him about it later. Officers shouldn't be talking about cases outside of work. Since Hizashi has it covered, let's get some food for them." "All right. I'm sure Izuku's hungry. We should get him something with meat, he seems to really like it." "I swear that kid is gonna eat a bear one day." Aizawa paused, scratched that they probably have. Hizashi was glad it was a Saturday. Sure, he felt a little bad calling in Recovery Girl, but Nezu had assured him the woman needed to do some paperwork anyway. He had also sent a text to Namuri to keep everyone away from them for now. She didn't know much about Izuku, but she promised to keep the others away. He was halfway to the nurse's office when he felt something wrap around his arm. Looking down he saw the coiled tail gripping his arm. Izuku was mostly hiding his face in the blonde's back though. "It's okay, little listener, no one is gonna bother us, okay?" The kid made a weird sound. "Hey, talk to me, what's wrong?" Can't change." "Why do you need to change?" They let out a growl-like sound before holding onto Hizashi tighter. "Is it 'cause you're scared?" "There's no reason to be scared. I'm right here, no one's gonna hurt you." "They did. And they're bad people. No one should hurt you or Hitoshi. You helped him with them, right?" "I was a re-reticulated python theory big." "Really? How big can they get?" They He felt their tail loosen around his arm, though it didn't drop, "can get to about 25 meters or 5 feet, but the largest one was 10 meters. Hizashi let out a low whistle, hearing the kid copy it quietly, thought when they did it sounded more like a bird. "That's pretty big. What did you turn into to scare him off?" "Wolf." "Are you scared of wolves?" "No, don't like them." "Ah, how come?" "They keep biting me." Izuku shifted a little and showed his arm, moving his sleeve a bit and showing the old scared claw and bite marks. "T2 packs in the woods. Like one, the other keeps trying to hurt me." "Well, that's not very nice." Izuku shook his head, making Hizashi laugh a little. "All right, we're here." They looked at the door and held on tightly to the other. "It's okay if you don't want to go in, but she's nice and you still need help. You can't change, remember." Hizashi waited while Izuku seemed to think. "Okay." He knocked on the door before entering, not all that surprised to see Nezu with Recovery Girl. "All right, Yamada, who do you have for me for today?" She walked over to the pair, looking to Izuku with a small smile. "And what's your name, dearie?" "Izuku." "Well, Izuku, it looks like you have a pretty bad cut on your head, why don't you come down here so I can take a look? The kid hesitated, holding on to Hizashi for a moment. You can keep holding his hand, but I need you down here to see how bad it is. Keeping their tail and hand latched onto the hero's sleeve, he climbed down and crouched so Recovery Girl could see it more clearly. There's a lot of BLD here, let's get you cleaned up and take another look. While Recovery Girl helped Izuku clean his hair out in the sink, Nezu got Hizashi's attention. I see you were able to befriend them. It was mostly Hitoshi and Shoyuta, but he likes me a little at least. A connection is still a connection, though I do have to ask about the mask he wears. Not sure, he takes it off just fine. Interesting, the principal walked up to the younger. Hello Izuku. The younger looked to him once they finished with his hair. My name is Principal Nezu. MIA. Mouse. A bear. Who knows? They tilted their head a little, their tail swishing back and forth. While Recovery Girl helps you, would you mind answering some questions? Oh, care you a stout. Ah. Very smart, I see. Yes, that is my base animal. Once Izuku was sat on one of the beds, Hizashi sat next to him, letting the kid wrap their tail around his arm again. Now I do have a question about your tail. In your old file it said you had 3, is there a reason it only appears as 1? I hide it. Slowly he unwound the tail, letting the others see them, and Recovery Girl checked them for injuries. People don't like them. Well, I think they're very pretty, little listener. Izuku blushed and bumped his head against the hero's arm. Fascinating. Other questions will have to be put on hold. Nezu, the head injury seems to have messed with their quirk, so Izuku honey, I'm going to use mine and let you sleep. When you wake up you'll feel better. They looked to Hizashi, who nodded, patting their head a little, being careful of the wound. It's alright Izuku, Shoyuta and Hitoshi are on their way too. Once they get here we'll wake you up, okay? Oh, okay. Once you're awake we can talk more about animals. Nezu offered, that seemed to make them perk up as they let out a slight chirp sound. Sleep well, dearie. Recovery Girl kissed his cheek, all them watching as the child slowly sank against Hizashi's side, unwilling to let the hero go. Ah, I feel like I'm gonna die from cuteness. The blonde ran his hand through Izuku's hair, making them purr. Oh my god. Quiet down, you blonde fool. He can still wake up. She lightly tapped him with her cane, being careful of the sleeping child. Nezu watched them with a small smile before also petting the child. Their hair is very soft. I'm surprised they hide their horns with the beanie. Nezu looked at the appendages and hummed, I'm sure when he gets older they will be larger. As well as the tails, I'm sure. Oh god, who showed the rat the kid? They all turned to see Hitoshi and Aizawa holding a few bags. We also brought snacks. Good idea, poor thing might need some after his nap. Recovery Girl looked through the bag. Why in God's name do you have a package of raw meat? I read somewhere that people with animal-based quirks often eat the same food as their animal, and I'm pretty sure they've eaten a wolf. I don't think some raw cow will kill them. Aizawa explained with an eye roll while Hitoshi carefully sat next to Izuku, laughing a little when their tail wrapped around his arm. Fine, but don't let him make a mess in my office. I am curious if he will eat the raw meat. I haven't seen his teeth, but I assume they are sharp. Nezu asked, looking to Aizawa, who nodded. I saw them when he helped me with a wolf attack. He can also change certain parts of himself. He was able to just change his teeth into a snake's rather than their whole body. Interesting. I wonder if they would mind doing a few tests for me. Hey, Aizawa pointed at him with a glare. I called dibs, this is our kid. Then I shall be the godfather. Does that mean Nezu's my godfather? Of course. No. The hero glared at Nezu, though Hizashi looked like he was trying not to laugh. How hurt was he? Hitoshi asked, letting the two others keep arguing, even though they all knew Nezu would win. Not too bad, just the head wound, made him a bit woozy and he couldn't change for some reason, but other than that just some bruising. What happened exactly? Hitoshi just gave me the shortened version. The kids that were messing with him before didn't stop and Izuku helped him one day. one of their dads works with Tsukachi and I'm sure there were a few videos or photos of Izuku in the forest and they connected it and decided to go looking for them. I'm not sure what happened on Izuku's side exactly but it seemed like they attacked him with sticks and rocks. I'm gonna become a child murderer. No, you're not, Sho. Hisashi stood to stop his husband but paused when he felt claws dig into his pants. Looking down, Izuku had shifted to laying on his lap with one hand holding onto his pants. Ah. Honey, look. This is one of the cutest things I've ever seen. He's like a giant cat. You should all let the giant cat sleep then. Recovery girl whispered, waving her cane around. Head wounds can be very serious. Now keep quiet or I kick you out. None of them were going to argue with her, all of them sitting down and talking quietly so they didn't disturb the kid. Chapter 6, Running Tests. Izuku felt exhausted. Normally when he slept in his burrow it wasn't this noisy, even with the small prey animals wandering around and chattering outside. Tightening his grip on whatever cloth he was laying on, he let out a growl, that usually got the animals to be quiet. Guys, I think they're waking up. With that their eyes shot open and they felt themselves shift into their large flying fox form and stick to the ceiling. Definitely awake. Hi Izuku. We didn't mean to scare you, little listener. Hisashi looked up and smiled at the bat, trying not to laugh when it just screeched at him. You wanna come down? Izuku looked at the group for a moment, nodding a little and turning into a cat, landing on the bed with a small thump, before turning back into his human form. A fantastic display, Izuku. Do you instinctively turn into animals or is it a conscious thought? He thought about it for a moment before making a SOSO motion with his hand. Interesting. Can you turn into all animals? Have to know about it to understand the animal first, see it move. They tried to think of a good way to explain it. Can turn into koi, trouble turning into a whale. I see, so you must know of and understand what the animal is. How have you seen some of these animals? Zuzai went in. They picked at their hoodie with their head ducked down, like they were waiting for punishment. So if we showed you a whale you could turn into a whale? Aizawa asked, very tempted to show Izuku a video of a whale and then asking the kid to crush the school. Depends, I like whale sharks but not SPRM whales too big. Do big things scare you? Hisashi smiled a little sympathetically. Small things scared him. Bigger than me. And how big are you? Nedzu asked this time. Big, not bigger than a SPRM whale. Hitoshi laughed a little at that. He's got a point, that snake you turned into was pretty large. Izuku's tail shifted back and forth a little. I like snakes theory. Interesting lots of things. If you don't mind me asking, Izuku, why do you talk like that? The kid tilted his head a little. Had to learn from people talking around me, reading is easier. Can you write? When they shook their head before pausing and tilting it, Aizawa felt like he was going to throwing his hand through the wall. Can you try and explain? Can better with symbols. Do you think if we taught you JSL you'd have an easier time? Izuku just stared at Hisashi. JSL is like talking but with your hands, like this, means, hello, stuff like that. The kid only shrugged. I can teach you, I'm still learning. Hitoshi offered, getting a smile, though they could only tell because his eyes squinted slightly. Kid, you know you can take the mask off, right? Izuku turned to Aizawa and shook his head. Why not? I have such sharp teeth, might bite someone. Have you bitten someone? They seemed to think for a moment before shrugging. Bite animals, not people, except myself. So then it's okay to take the mask off, right? Are you sure? Of course. I would also like to see your teeth. Hisashi and Aizawa glared at Nedzu but Recovery Girl agreed. I'm interested as well, you likely have a mostly meat diet, right? Izuku nodded, slowly taking the mask off, watching all of their reactions before smiling a little. Hisashi let out a low whistle. Once again they repeated the sound with a more melodic tune. You do have quite sharp teeth. And you're able to change them. Izuku nodded again and opened his mouth a little, allowing the teeth to grow before settling to look like a tiger's mouth. Amazing. Are you able to do that to other parts of your body? Izuku just lifted their hand and showed as it turned into a tiger paw before showing their tail and nothing happening. Ah, so your mutations are fixed then. Stays. That is what fixed means. If Hitoshi here is going to teach you JSL, I would be more than willing to teach you more words. Aizawa was glaring at the principal, but Nezu just ignored it. Yes. He made a growl-like sound, but they all assumed it meant a good thing since he hadn't stopped smiling. Izuku, would you mind me taking some scans? Recovery Girl asked. I think with the sounds you make you might also be changing your vocal cords, either that or it's another mutation of your quirk. Do we even have that equipment in UA? We go beyond plus ultra. Yes Aizawa, we have the equipment. Are you alright with that Izuku? The kid looked around at everyone before nodding. Then give me one moment. Nezu had Recovery Girl run a few more tests along with the scans, wanting to see if their body was in peak health or not. The scans showed that their vocal cords were in fact mutated while in human form, but when changed to a different animal they shifted to fit the animal. It also showed that the two smaller tails were all cartilage like a stingray's, while the larger tail did have bones. Doing the full exam also showed old bone breaks and sprains, though Recovery Girl had pointed out that they all healed correctly. The physical exam also showed scars from other animals, Izuku explaining how he got all of the bite marks or slashes, even the ones not from animals freaked the family out. I swear I'm gonna wrap that kid in bubble wrap, Hisashi said while staring at the group. Hitoshi was never that bad, even when he tried to sled down the stairs. Aizawa looked over to the two kids, both now sitting on the bed while Hitoshi showed Izuku different letters in JSL. In Izuku's defense, he literally raised himself in the woods. I think if Hitoshi spent more than an hour alone in the woods he would do worse. How hard do you think you could bite me? Both stood up at that. Alright kiddos. Hisashi carefully pulled Izuku closer to him while Aizawa glared at their son. Why don't we eat? I remember Sho and Hitoshi getting food right. Luckily the kids seemed to like the distraction and contact, using their tail to hold on to Hisashi's arm again. Oh yeah, we got you raw meat. Hitoshi grabbed the bags and dumped the contents onto the bed, shifting through it before pulling out the package and handing it to Izuku. They looked at it for a moment before tearing it open and pulling a piece out, sniffing it and then shoving it into their mouth with a purr. This is awesome, I feel like I'm feeding a lion. Don't call Izuku a lion, they're also a child. A baby lion. Aizawa just sighed while Hisashi laughed. Alright, I need to go tell Nem what happened before she dash. I heard there was a baby. Izuku jumped a little and growled before Hisashi patted their head. The kid looked around before curling back up with their food. Ah, it's a little lion. Not a lion. He does seem to like turning into foxes and tigers, perhaps he's adopted their habits. Nezu suggested with a smirk, watching Aizawa groan again. Well, what's the little tiger lily's name? She sat across from them with a smile. This is Izuku, my new pet lion. He is not your pet. But we're keeping them right. Aizawa just rolled his eyes while Izuku purred and looked for more food, taking the snacks Hitoshi handed to him. Yes, we'll adopt the kid if they want to live with us. Hitoshi only laughed while Namuri cooed. He's so cute, just look at him. I know, right? He fell asleep on me and I felt like I could never move. Izuku watched them go back and forth before looking at Nezu again and shifting into a stoat and running up the principal before relaxing against his shoulders. I've never had to carry anyone before. Nezu pet them with a smile while Namuri practically shrieked. If they don't want you guys, I'll take them. We called dibs. So you can call dibs, but I can't call them my pet lion. Yes, Izuku watched them for a moment before he seemed to perk up, looking around the room before focusing on the window. He jumped off of the principal and ran to the window, shifting to human and opening it, looking around. Izuku. Everything okay? Hear her. They all looked to each other, wondering who her was, but their questions were answered when a pale dove landed on the window sill, chirping at Izuku and pecking at his hand lightly. Izuku soon started making chirping sounds back before turning into a dove, the two animals seeming to communicate. Interesting, Nedzu rubbed his chin with a smile. They can talk to animals and copy their sounds, but it also seems like they can communicate with them through movements, like many natural animals. It would explain why he does random movements sometimes. Ah, he's a little dancer. They watched as the two birds hopped around and chirped before Izuku changed back and let the other bird fly away. What was that about, sweetie? Izuku tilted his head for a moment before smiling. Was watching her babies. That's why you didn't run away. Hizashi picked Izuku up, spinning them around. Ah. Our little hero. The child just let it happen, going slack in the hero's grip. Hey Izuku, they let out a trill sound, turning their body in Hizashi's grip to look at Hitoshi. Are you staying with us now? I can show you my room and stuff. They scrunched their eyebrows a little, their tail swishing a bit. Remember what I said, Izuku. If you're invited inside you can go, but you don't have to. Wanna. They climbed up Hizashi before settling on his back again, like being with you. Show. I'm gonna cry. The blonde reached behind him and grabbed Izuku, holding him against his chest while sobbing. Yay. I'm an aunt of two. Namiri turned to Hitoshi. Are you excited to have a sibling? Gonna get some rivalry going. Fight over the controllers. Yeah, he's pretty cool, but no, I'm not doing any rivalry or fighting. He can literally just turn into a bear and eat me. Izuku slipped out of Hizashi's hold and turned into a snake, winding around Hitoshi's arm and bonking him with their horns. I know you wouldn't eat me. Ah. Talking about adopting Izuku was easy, even getting the proper paperwork done was easy, getting them to stay in the house though seemed like a problem. Hey Izuku, Hitoshi pulled himself up onto the roof and sat next to the other. What are you doing out here? Like it? Do you ever want to go back to the forest? Izuku turned to him and tilted their head. I mean, you did kind of have a whole life out there, right? I do. Maybe we could go there sometimes. I mean, you've lived there like your entire life. I doubt Dad or Pops would mind us going out there if you're okay with me coming with you. He smiled at Hitoshi, using his tails to carefully squeeze the other. Cool, maybe we can ask them tomorrow and you can stop running away to the roof and hiding under furniture. Like hiding, cats join me. That's because Manji and BSTRD thrive on chaos. The two laughed a little, not making a move to leave the roof until a few hours later when Aizawa got back from patrol. What are you two doing out here? It's getting cold out. He ushered them both inside, smiling when he saw Hitoshi lay on the top bunk while Izuku went under the beds where blankets were gathered. Get some sleep you two, you have stuff in the morning. Chapter 7, Shoe Shopping. Izuku, you have to wear shoes. The child frowned and looked at their feet for a moment. Why? Aizawa rubbed his eyes with a sigh. Because most places have rules about wearing shoes, kid. You have to wear them when we go out. He frowned again before showing the bottom of his foot. Yes Izuku, I know you can just change to protect your feet, but you have to wear shoes cause not everyone knows that. Are you still trying to get him to put shoes on? Hitoshi asked with a smirk. Shut up, you weren't this bad. Wow, comparing kids already, Dad. Don't get me started, Hitoshi, the kid cackled before grabbing his own shoes. See Izuku. Hitoshi puts them on. Don't you want to be like your brother? No. Did you think that would work? Hitoshi, I swear to God. Let me try. Hitoshi pretended to cough into his fist. Izuku, if you put your shoes on for this one trip, we can get you these special shoes Pop saw that'll be more comfortable. Izuku narrowed their eyes at Hitoshi. Once. Just this once. The two stared each other down before Izuku nodded and began putting his shoes on. I hate this family. Aizawa stood up and rubbed his eyes. Zashi, let's go. You have to get Izuku shoes or he's going barefoot next time. On it. They had gone to the shoe store first, just like they promised Izuku, and had already gone through 5 different pairs of shoes. They tried one specifically for people with claw mutations, but he said they still felt cramped and wrong. They tried a few different sandals and Izuku agreed to wear them if they had to, but they still didn't like them. At this point Aizawa was willing to give up and just figure out how to bribe the child into wearing sandals. Okay, Izuku, is there a reason you don't like shoes? He pulled his legs up onto the chair while Aizawa crouched in front of him. Hizashi and Hitoshi had gone off somewhere else to supposedly get the shoes Hizashi had seen and thought they were a better idea than all of this. They made a slight growl sound before shaking their head like gloves or mask. Gloves or, Aizawa trailed off before sighing, it makes it harder to defend yourself. Izuku nodded happily while the underground hero covered his eyes. Now he felt bad for trying to get the child to put shoes on. Okay, let's try what Hizashi is bringing, then if those don't work we'll just make you wear long pants so no one notices. Sorry. Don't apologize, it's not your fault. He ruffled the kid's white hair with a smile, watching as their tails swished a little. Okay. The reason we didn't try these first is because these were like a last resort idea. Hizashi and Hitoshi came back, the blonde holding a black bag, plus we had to order these. I wasn't going to originally but then Nedzu sent me a cryptic text so I'm trying not to question it. That rat is going to drive me up a wall. Stout. Fine, the stout is going to drive me up a wall, give me the shoes Zashi. He took the bag and opened it, staring at the contents for a moment. Zashi. So I did some research and these actually do count as shoes. With a sigh Aizawa pulled out what looked like foot guards that were used in Taekwondo, the heel, ball of the foot, and toes left uncovered but the rest of the foot covered in a thin black fabric. Izuku stared at them for a moment before grabbing them and putting them on. It took him a moment to get them on correctly before securing the parts on the back of his ankle. How does it feel? So far it was winning about as much as the sandals, the normal shoes. Izuku had put them on for a moment before kicking them off and hissing. Standing up, they let out a trill before hopping around and spinning. I think they like them. Thank God, Aizawa sighed. Okay, are they paid for? Hizashi nodded. Good, let's get clothes, more bedding, and whatever else we need to get before I finally decide to bring out my sleeping bag. You didn't even bring it with you. Hitoshi, you know better than to question me. By the end of the shopping trip Izuku officially had something close to shoes, the fluffiest blankets known to man, and a bunch of random clothes they had all picked out, because Izuku didn't really care what the clothes looked like as long as they were comfortable and he could move in them. For the love of God, can I nap now? Yes, Sho, you can have a nap. I will be joining the nap, father. Are you tired yet, Izuku? The child looked to Hizashi before shaking his head. All right, then it'll just be us for the rest of the day. As soon as they got home Hitoshi and Aizawa both passed out on the couch, leaving Izuku and Hizashi to take in all the bags. Not that either minded, especially when Izuku could just turn into a buck and they could hang the bags on his antlers. Anything you want to do, Zuku? Hizashi looked over his shoulder, not surprised when the kid climbed onto his back and settled there. Walk. The blonde chuckled and ruffled their hair. They really did act like the house pet. Sure. They walked through the streets with Izuku looking in slight wonder, while he had traveled around the city at night, seeing it in daylight with so many people was so much different. Hizashi had a destination in mind though. The parents had talked about signing their kids up for classes, though they had mostly been talking about Hitoshi until Izuku showed up, and with all the access energy Izuku seemed to have, it was a good idea. While they knew Hitoshi wanted to be a hero, specifically like his dad rather than Pops, none of them knew if Izuku even wanted to be a hero. The classes could be for fun though if they decided not to be a hero. Would you look at this? Hizashi pretended to be shocked when he stopped in front of a gymnastics gym. I wonder what this is. Izuku stared at him before giggling. Bad liar, why here? The blonde rubbed his neck a little. It was honestly strange how well Izuku could read anyone, let alone trained heroes. Well, Hitoshi wants to be a hero like Sho, right? And that needs training. Izuku nodded along, and well, I am not sure if you want to be a hero, but the classes could help with your energy and could just be for fun. The kid looked between the gym and Hizashi. Help being a hero. They pointed to the doors. Yep. Izuku nodded before beginning to drag Hizashi to the doors. All right. Let's do this, little listener. Mina loved the gym, getting to run around, do gymnastics and dance. She was in heaven every time she came through those doors. She knew everyone that went there and she knew every worker by name, just like they all knew hers, so she knew when someone new was in the gym. Looking the other kid over, it was easy to tell they were around her age. They had fluffy white hair with black horns and a strange coiled tail swishing behind them. They wore a dark purple long-sleeved shirt with black pants and a strange wrapping on their feet. She stared at him for another moment before smiling. She was going to befriend this newcomer and introduce them to the wonders of gymnastics and dance if it killed her. Getting closer to him, she could see a few scars on his face and a few peeking out of his collar and sleeves. Maybe he was in danger or something. If she was going to be a hero, then she needed to save him. Hi there. They jumped at her voice but still tried to smile and wave. She noticed their slightly clawed nails. My name's Mina. I couldn't help but notice we both have horns. She put her hand to her chin and struck a pose, waiting a moment before looking to them. He wore a large smile before nodding and pointing between their horns. Exactly. And personally, I think that's a sign from the universe that we're destined to be friends. Do you ignore the universe? He tilted his head but she only smiled. Good. So we're best friends now. She grabbed their arm and began dragging them to one of the spring floors. He made a slight squeak sound before seeming to just accept it and follow after her. Thank you so much, sir. I'm sure my kids would love it here. We'll be seeing more of you soon, I'm sure. Hizashi shook hands with the owner. All right, Izuku. He paused, realizing Izuku wasn't where he left him. Izuku. Oh, looks like they made a friend. The owner pointed to one of the spring floors where a girl with pink skin and horns, who wore blue shorts and a green shirt, was showing Izuku how to do a handstand. Wasn't expecting that, Hizashi chuckled. Maybe you'll see us sooner. Chapter 8, Friends Fight. Hitoshi liked his new sibling. It was genuinely hard not to like Izuku though. They were strange but in a nice way. They protected him from bullies, and was even better at convincing their dads to get things than Hitoshi was, simply because he could just turn into a puppy and do actual puppy eyes. He had been worried that maybe he would grow to hate Izuku for all the reasons he had seen on the internet about parents sometimes loving the new child more, or maybe they just wouldn't get along, but Hitoshi really loved having Izuku as a little brother. It might have been because Izuku was a mostly blank slate and Hitoshi got to show him all these things from some meme to straight up how to read and talk. He never worried about Pops and Dad loving Izuku more because the two practically did everything together, and the few times Izuku went somewhere with one, the other would stay with Hitoshi. No one was ever really left out. Even on the random days Izuku would sometimes leave to go to the forest, with Hitoshi not far behind, he still had fun, especially when Izuku got to teach him something for once. He was even excited when he learned they were going to be taking classes to be better heroes, because that meant they could be heroes together. Hitoshi, however, did not like Mina Ashido. Sure, she was nice and helped them with gymnastic moves, complimented them when they did good, and sometimes tried to help Izuku when they were doing work Nedzu have given them. It was a fight to get them to wear shoes. Aizawa did not want to fight about wearing a uniform until they were older. So Hitoshi didn't like Mina because sometimes it felt like she was trying to take his brother, especially in this situation, where she was literally trying to convince Izuku to be her sibling. It would be so fun, Izuku. The horns already mean the universe thinks we should at least be friends. The white-haired boy was doing a handstand, still tilting his head a little when she mentioned the universe. Ignore her. Hitoshi got out of his own handstand, stretching his arms above him with a slight groan. She just likes to hear her own voice. Izuku only shrugged, as much as you could while upside down, and went back to trying out a flip they had seen. You don't have to be so mean, Hitoshi. The girl crossed her arms with a huff. I think you're just jealous I give all my attention to Izuku. He rolled his eyes before grabbing a fallen towel and throwing it in her face. Hey. That stupid shtick might work on the schoolboys where you're from, but not me. She rolled her eyes right back. If I wanted attention I'd do stupid things. Climbing fridge with me? Izuku asked, seeming to tune back into the conversation. No, That was to see why you like sitting on top of the fridge so much. Tall. Hitoshi nodded along. They did get to be tall when they were on the fridge. Well then why don't you like me? She whined, hanging off his shoulders with a groan. We could all be family and you're ruining the vibe. Probably because every chance you get you try to take my brother from me. Have you seen your sibling though? They're so cute. Hitoshi rolled his eyes, shoving her off and letting her roll dramatically on the floor. Whatever Mina. Izuku paused and watched the two argue. He didn't see his family argue often. He knew his parents argued about hours and family time sometimes or about tough cases, but they always assured him they weren't leaving over a small thing. He had even argued with all of them a few times, the shoe incident, when he climbed onto Hizashi a little too often, when he left Hitoshi at home or stole one of his blankets, but this felt different. Izuku knew Mina and Hitoshi liked hanging out, otherwise they would be arguing all of the time or ignoring each other, but they only argued sometimes and it was usually about Izuku or heroes. They knew their brother well enough to know he had trouble with people who had heroic quirks and good lives, not that Izuku blamed him. They sometimes got jealous about that stuff, but they were happy with their life. Watching the two fight reminded him of the wolf packs in the forest, the one he always fought against and the one that let him hunt with them, except Mina wasn't trying to actively kill him. Once they got home Izuku grabbed Hitoshi's hand and dragged him into their room. Sitting on the bottom bunk Izuku crossed his arms and stared at Hitoshi. What? Why do you argue? Hitoshi seemed surprised by the question, but Izuku wasn't done. Don't hate each other, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong Izuku, their tail lightly hit Hitoshi, I'm not lying. Yes you are. The taller groaned and flopped onto the bed, not surprised to see Izuku shift into Fennec Fox and sit on his chest, waiting for him to answer. The two laid there silently until Hitoshi sighed. Would you have gone with someone else if they offered? The fox stared at him for a moment, tilting their head this way and that before shaking it. You're sure? Some other nice family could have wandered in and taken you in. The fox shifted back to his brother, though they didn't move. Wouldn't have gone. Why not? Not you. Yeah, but you didn't know us. Izuku thinks for a moment before answering. I did. Hitoshi sits up a little with a surprised look. I followed Dad, not just on patrol. Izuku looked down a little, saw you and Pops a lot, liked you all, so no, only you. The two sat silently before Hitoshi chuckled. God, you're such a stalker. Shut up. Izuku sat up and grabbed the pillow, smacking Hitoshi with it like they had seen in the movies. Hey. It quickly devolved into the two play fighting in their room, though Hitoshi kept losing. The next day when they go back to the gym, Izuku shoves Hitoshi towards Mina with a smile before going to one of the teachers. What was that about? Mina asked as she stretched her legs. We talked yesterday about stuff. Mina lifted an eyebrow at him, looking unimpressed. God, you both do that, you know. Of course we do. We were besties by law of the universe. Hitoshi rolled his eyes but sat next to her on the mats. Look, I really like my brother, he's awesome. I thought I would grow to hate him or be envious because of his quirk or something, but I'm not. I'm excited about being his brother and about becoming heroes together, even with. Hitoshi paused and took a deep breath. I was bullied for my quirk because it's a villain quirk, but Izuku, my dads, don't see it that way and I like that. I like that they have confidence and pride in me. But it's hard sometimes when you, who has an amazing quirk in the personality to be a hero, joke about taking him away. Hitoshi, he looked to Mina who was crying. I would never. She suddenly jumped up and tackled him into a hug. You guys are my best friends. I would obviously take both of you. Har har. She sat up and looked at him seriously. I don't know what your quirk is, but I know you, and I know you would never be a villain, so everyone who said otherwise can shut their mouth all right. She hugged him again, a little tighter this time. Thanks Mina, that means a lot. He hesitantly hugged her back, the two just laying on the mats before Izuku draped himself over both of them. Better. Friends. Yeah, we're friends. We better be. I'm making friendship bracelets. She gasped, do either of you know how to make friendship bracelets? When they both shook their heads she gasped again, that is cruel. We must learn post-haste. Pulling out the big words. Hey. They were on Izuku's homework. Not my fault he doesn't use them. The white-haired teen only smiled and followed after the two, happy to see them not arguing. Chapter 9, Teaching. Eraser, Aizawa had his face down on the desk, trying to ignore his working co-workers, but this one was percipient. I know you're awake. What do you want, Vlad? The other heroics teacher put a file on his desk. I have a student, Tamaki Amajiki, his quirk allows him to turn into whatever he eats. And what does that have to do with me? Vlad sighed. He needs help learning how to use his transformations. I assumed you would have a way to help him. It wasn't the first time Vlad had asked for his assistance on a student. Even the few times Aizawa had a student it wasn't unusual for him to ask Vlad's opinion on something. Sure, they had a strange rivalry, but they were teachers trying to prepare the next generation. I'm not sure, transformation quirks, especially ones likely animal-based like Amajiki are hard to find. I can see show honey. Present Mike interrupted with a smile, we know someone with an animal transformation quirk. You do? Good, would they be willing to help Amajiki then? Zashi, we don't. This time it was Aizawa that cut himself off before sighing, yes we do and I can ask, I'll see if I can bring them in tomorrow. Thank you then. Sho, did you forget about one of our kids? Aizawa glared at the other hero. No, I just didn't think of them when he brought up a student needing help. I mean it makes the most sense, Izuku has a talent for turning into animals with a single glance at them, plus the rate he changes is impressive. Did I just hear you bring one of my nephews in? Midnight practically jumped onto their desks, you should bring both. I can watch the little SHT while you take care of the lion. Don't even them, they're both little sheets, Hitoshi and that Mina girl have him corrupted. You have to admit, it's a little adorable seeing them make plans. Present Mike turned to Midnight with a wide smile. Everyone always thinks Izuku is smart, but he was raised by literal animals and has an incredibly analytical brain. Don't remind me, Nedzu's been bothering me about having more classes with both the boys. Aizawa leaned back in his chair with a groan. Turns out Hitoshi just needed a partner in crime to become even more of a menace. Ah, the little babies are bonding. I have to meet this Mina girl too if she's such an influence. Hitoshi was thinking of inviting her over for a sleepover. I think Izuku just planned on kidnapping her. We're still working on the laws and boundaries of the world. I'll let the little guy kidnap their friend. It'll probably be fine. Sure, until they show up in her room as a giant wolf or a tiger. Little lion baby just want a friend. Aizawa rolled his eyes and set his head back down, deciding to ignore the other two as they kept making jokes and trying to think of how to ask for Izuku's help. Izuku, Hitoshi. Aizawa called for them as soon as he got into the house. They all found out it was better to just rip the band-aid off because Izuku somehow always knew something was wrong. You home? In Izuku's room. Hitoshi called, which meant Izuku was probably in animal form or in a growl mood. Not that Aizawa ever blamed them, he was always in a growl mood. As the boys got older, the four had moved into a slightly larger house, allowing the boys their own rooms, a larger kitchen and living room, an office for Hisashi and Aizawa, and not to mention even a small backyard they often trained or played in. Walking into Izuku's room he looked around for the two, not spotting them at first. Izuku's room looked like the forest, having a soft green carpet floor with hand-painted walls courtesy of the room's resident. Their bed was raised high enough off the floor that it allowed them and the cats to hide under it when they wanted, a few extra blankets stored under there to create a nest while the actual bed was large enough to fit a few people into its blanket nest. There were different cat towers with fake leaves strung around them and even a few ledges that they could lounge on. Though everyone liked the ceiling, it was painted a dark blue to look like the sky while there were glowing stars and string lights hanging to create light for the room. Hitoshi was currently at Izuku's desk, not that the other used it, while Izuku was in his flying fox form, hanging upside down on one of the cat towers while Manji and Bstrd laid on the different ledges. How was school? It was fine, my teacher got that extra work from Nezu and it helped boost my grade. Izuku let out a small screech. He said it was fine and Nezu gave him an idea for his quirk and mine. Oh. What were the ideas? That if Izuku can turn into any animal as long as he knows how it works or moves, then technically he should be able to turn into fictional animals, though he wouldn't be able to breathe fire or anything maybe. He spun in the chair to face Aizawa. He also wants to test me range and if I could manipulate my voice to better catch people. Don't hurt yourself by screaming too much and don't burn the house down as a dragon. Hitoshi smirked while Izuku only screeched before flying over to Aizawa and landing on his back. Fine, you caught me. He sat down on the bed, allowing Izuku to change into a wolf and lay across his lap with a tail wag. One of Vlad's students needs help with their quirk. It's also a transformation quirk and I was wondering if you'd be willing to come to the school and help. If they go, can I come too? Aizawa lifted a brow. I could hang out with Nezu, Pops, or Aunt Nem while you work. I just really want to try the manipulation voice thing. That's fine, just don't try to control the entire school. No promises. Aizawa rolled his eyes before ruffling his son's hair and looking to Izuku. The wolf tilted their head back and forth before huffing and laying on Aizawa's leg with a doppy smile and wagging their tail. As long as you're okay with it, we'll go tomorrow, so Hitoshi you'll be called out of school. I get to skip and take over the school. Awesome. Hitoshi no. Alright Hitoshi. You ready to spend a fun day with your pops and aunt? Can we visit Nezu? He said he had a few more ideas for my quirk. Hizashi ruffled his hair. Sure thing. We can check during lunch. Hitoshi cheered as the blonde looked to his husband and other kid. You two have fun and keep me updated, alright? We will. Bye Papa. Hizashi only cooed before dragging Hitoshi off, likely to sit in on classes with various teachers and try to creep out some of the students. He was Aizawa's son too after all. You ready Izuku? The kid looked down the halls before jumping and transforming into a snake, coiling around Aizawa and hiding in his capture weapon. I like the way you think. He patted the snake before going to the 1B class. The two teachers had decided Aizawa would pull Tamaki out of classes so he would have more time to work while also scaring the other students with the possibility of being stuck with the teacher who expelled students left and right. He knocked on the door once before opening it. All of the students were frozen and staring at him. He let his eyes slowly rake over them before stopping at Tamaki. Amajiki, with me, he walked.